So now what I will speak about in the second session is how confusion arises as wisdom. So I'll talk about how confusion arises as wisdom, and that in this, in our root text, what it says is, so next is confusion arising as wisdom. When through the power of meditating on all phenomena as being free of arising and ceasing, you cut through everything, no matter how it appears or is realized in your own nature, confusion has arisen as wisdom. So generally when we say confusion arising as wisdom, most people explain this in connection with the path of mantra. But there is a way to explain it in connection with both Sutra and Tantra. And Dr. Rinpoche said in his great collection of Dharma talks, there are two aspects to confusion arising as wisdom, the tradition of its transcendences and the tradition of the secret mantra Vajrayana. In the tradition of the transcendences, confusion arising as wisdom means that because of the way that the cognition dispels confusion is like a dream or an illusion, everything that is perceived and all perceivers have never been separate from the very beginning. When you realize that the non-dual nature is pure by essence, does not appear, has no appearances, and that the perceiver has subsided and that is free of conceptual extremes, that is confusion arising as wisdom. According to the secret mantra tradition, confusion arising as wisdom means all confusion and non-confusion are inseparable from your own mind. Because they are not separate, they are the nature of mind, the essence of mind, manifestations of mind. The confused is clear and thought-free, clear and empty and undefiable, clear, empty and continuous, clear, empty and free of center edge, naked and unsupported awareness. You must realize this meaning clearly in the ground. This is the co-emergent mind essence. It is the essence of the Dharmakaya, and co-emergent appearances are the light of the Dharmakaya. External apprehended objects and all that appears are not separate from the mind essence. They must arise as non-dual, equal and elaborate and great bliss. To sum it up, confusion is ignorance, and when awareness arises as wisdom, confusion arises as in sum. There's the path is the way of all distributed appearances, subject and object, disappearing in the meditated equipoise and seeing the Dharma nature directly. And so that's and then in the post-meditation, without that wisdom getting lax, you see all appearances as like dreams and illusions. So in the Tantra, all confusion arises, accused appearances arise from the unadulterated luminous mind. And then through the stages of light, increase in attainment, in the end, they dissolve into that unadulterated luminous mind itself. Or through that itself, they merely become manifest. All confusion ceases on its own. So here, at this point, the actual way that confusion arises as wisdom is generally taught in terms, it needs to be taught about in connection with Tantra and in connection with Mahamudra, I believe. And the reason for this is that it says in Lolayak's commentary on the Four Dharmas, generally, by meditating on the specific Mahayana path, all the deficiencies, states, and confusions are not viewed as something to discard. They can be made to arise as wisdom. In particular, though, through the power of perception, all confusion is unobservable by nature. By the power of the blessings of the play of wisdom, They are realized in an instant. Thus, these are the instructions on the fourth, confusion arising as wisdom. And so basically, when we talk about wisdom, confusion arising as wisdom, it's taught about primarily in terms of the Tantra and the Mahamudra. It needs to be joined to the practice of those two. Now, generally, in the different tantras, there are many different ways of manifesting ways or paths to manifest the nature in both the causal and the resultant vehicles. So Gampopa said in Dusing Khenpo's Dialogues with the Gampopa, so there are three paths. And the three paths are taking inference as the path, taking blessings as the path, and taking perception as the path. And so it's so in the context of the sutras, the meaning of the nature of mind itself, or of nature of things itself, is realized gradually through evidence and inference. In the context of Tantra, and through deity yoga and the interdependency channels, pradhanas and baddhas, and in the context it is of Mahamudra through the unmistaken restrictions given by the exalted guru, that is how it is manifested. And so in particular, you have to, in Mahamudra, you follow the through the so these are the methods or the particular features of how to point out the nature state nakedly and directly, in particular through the unmistaken instructions given by the guru. There are also two types of individuals who enter the three paths, so which Gampopa says are the instantaneous and the gradual. So Gampopa says the instantaneous are individuals who have trained and who have shallow imprints of the impediments, such as the and they also have the deep imprints of the Dharma. This is extremely difficult, and I consider myself Gampopa. So basically, for the individuals who manifest in nature, there are the instantaneous and the gradual. And the instantaneous means someone who doesn't need to train in this lifetime, but as someone who's done a lot of training in previous lives and has very deep imprints and very stable imprints in the training. That is what is necessary to be instantaneous. And so some people think that instantaneous means that someone who has never trained the path and someone who has never trained in previous lives. If you think that, it is mistaken. So generally in all scriptures, the most well-known is the method of chaining through by entering the three trainings in stages, or by following the stages of the paths of the three types of individuals and training in them in an order. So this is what is most commonly known. And so there are many people who say that the Dabokaj explanation of the instantaneous methods of manifesting the nature are not right, that they're inappropriate. Many people have made such objections. The most famous objection is the Sakya Pandita. In his exposition on the three vows, he makes many objections to the Kaju, and one of these is about how one trains the path. And the words is in the present Mahamudra and the Dzogchen of the Chinese tradition are going from the top to bottom and the bottom to top. Other than giving them the names of instantaneous and gradual, there is no distinction in the meaning. So when the Dapokaju said that there's a difference between the instantaneous and the gradual individual, he says that they're following the Chinese traditions. And among them, he talks about the Chinese Dzogchen, and I don't know what the Chinese Dzogchen tradition. I don't think that there's any Dzogchen in China. But when he's talking about the Chinese Dzogchen, what he probably means is the Chinese Zen tradition. And that Chinese Zen tradition is what Tibetans call that the Chinese Hashang. And the reason why they call it the Chinese Hashang view is they've come from, there's a tradition that has come from the Chinese. And so it's one reason why they're called Chinese. And Hashang means, Hashang is actually just a Chinese word. If you were to translate it into Tibetan or English, it would mean Kempo, or it would be abbot, the person who gives the vows. And that's what is understood. But these days, when we say Kempo, it has become a level of scholarly achievement. But here it is meant as terms of the person who gives ordination. But it can also be used to refer to all monks. But in the old times, it primarily meant the Khenpos who gave traditions. For example, there's the word lama in Tibetan, which when we say Tibetan, we don't call everyone lamas, right? But when you go abroad, all Tibetan monks are called lamas. They use the word lama for all Tibetan monks, so that's the same. So basically, in 786 AD, in in the Tibetan histories. So in 786 AD, I always get this date wrong. So in 786, into the 8th century, the Tibetan Emperor Chisung Dezhen invited from what's in present-day Tunhong in China. He brought the Kempo Mahayana, or Great Vehicle, and he invited him to Lhasa. And so while he was in Tibet, Kamalashia and other Indian scholars, there was a controversy between them. So the Indian scholars said that the explanations of the Chinese scholars, the explanations of Hasham Mahayana, do not match the teachings in the words of the Buddha. And so it's that there's that controversy. And so and what this is called in many in the Tibetan histories is it's called the Tunmen and the Tsenmen controversy. So Tunmen and Tsenmen are these are not Tibetan words; they are Chinese words. If you were to translate them into Tibetan, they would be called the simultaneous and the gradual. So Tunmen and Tsenmen means the simultaneous, the gradual and the simultaneous. So later, there were most of Tibetan history letters there are probably 90 different separate translations. And 90 of them, these 90 all say that Mahayana lost the debate, and that it was that the Chinese Hashang view was not allowed to spread in Tibet. This is what is well known, and so for that reason, many later Tibetans say that the Tapo Kagyu are followers of the Chinese Hashang, and that they're wrongbos. And they spent many years wearing black hats and teaching that. But later there were many texts in Dunhuang. There are many texts from the time of the Tibetan emperors, and among them there is one about the pith instructions of. There is one about the Mahayana instructions on instantaneously realizing the nature. And so this was written in the year 794. And this is the same year as the Tunsen and the controversy about the simultaneous and gradual views was completed. It was the same year. So it's that same year. That's the same year that controversy was resolved, or that concluded. Now, there are two different manuscripts there. So in the Tunhuang manuscripts, there are two manuscripts. One has been preserved in a library in Paris, France, and one has been conserved in the British Library. Now, there is an introduction at the beginning of this manuscript, and what it says there, the Emperor Chisun Detsen invited three masters from, including Kempo Mahayana, and they brought 30 Brahmas from India. When Mahayana was there, this is the time when the empress took monastic vows, and the person who gave her the vows was the Chinese Hashang Mahayana master. Now the next year, there's the monkey year, and I'm not sure which year it is because I haven't researched. The Indian master said that Hasha Mahayana's view did not match the words of Buddha and therefore should be banned. They requested this of the emperor. Mahayana was disappointed, and he requested the emperor, said that let's have a dialogue with the Indian masters. Let's talk it through. He made this request, and the emperor said, "Of course, it's fine." And so Mahayana and the Indian masters had a very long discussion. Usually, we'd say that they had discussions over the course of 2 years, 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years. In the very end, after they had so much discussion, Hashang Mahayana, they were unable to defeat Hashang Mahayana. And when they couldn't defeat him, the Indian monks, what they did is they weren't able to, they gathered all the text together and considered it as if he had been defeated. They considered that, but from Mahayana's perspective, there are many different texts that are supported. He had a lot of support in the Tibetan and Shinto texts, and so because of this, all the Brahma monks from India were afraid and didn't know what to do, according to Mahayana. Then in the dog year, on the 15th day of the first month, the Tibetan emperor made an announcement. It spread it as an announcement to everyone, and he said that Mahayana's Samten tradition fits with the words, and it definitely fits with the tradition, and there's no mistake there, and so you cannot stop it. Everyone should respect it, and anyone who wishes to practice may. And so this is the instruction, and then following that later, there is a list of all the topics and all the points of their discussions, and this is the text that we definitely have to examine, that we have to research. But this text is in Chinese. I've seen that someone has translated from Tibet, has translated into Tibetan. And I have translated the introduction into Tibetan. Not only is there that text, there's also the Pangtang insect from the time of the emperor, and so this is an index of Dharma texts. So it's also called the Great Index. So there are 3 different indexes or codices just compiled at that time. There's the Pengarwa, there's the Dengarma, and Pangdama. Those 2 codices are still present. There's the Chempowa, which is missing. In any case, in this index, there are many Chinese Zen tradition texts from the Chinese Zen tradition. Probably something like 10,000, but I haven't listed them. But it is from the time of the Tibetan emperors. Chisun Detsen did allow it. There is that index. Likewise, there's Nupchen Sangye She. I'm not exactly certain when he was born, but usually when I teach it, it seems like he probably was at the time of Chisun Detsen, and some people say that he was later. So I haven't had a chance to check his dates of birth. But in any case, but this is an old text. And what it says is that in the tradition of the causal vehicle, the two types of sharp and dull faculties are the institutus and gradus. So because of the distinction between sharp and dull, they're the two types of individuals, the instantaneous and the gradual. And the gradual they're from the Tibetan. They assert the texts of the Indian Master Kamalashila. And these are not entirely, and these do not have the entire, these are not the text of all of the entire and definitive meaning. The instantaneous lineage are the tradition that went from Kashyapa to Dharma Bodhi. And so then it says, and then the last in this is Hashang Mahayana, are the texts, the simultaneous tradition. These are the complete set of scriptures. And so what he is saying here is that there's the Zen tradition that passed down from Chinese Zen tradition that passed down from Dharma Bodhi, which the Tibetans call the Chinese Hashang view. And so that is the tradition that this is identifying. And so this is a textual tradition that has both the entirely complete tradition of both the expedient and the ultimate meanings. So now in the Chinese Zen tradition was first originated in India. It is not at all something that was invented by the Chinese Buddhists. There was it was spread in India, or it's in China, by the Indian master Bodhidharma. And he took as his primary source the Travels to Lanka and other sutras of the last turning the wheel of Dharma. But then he had the sixth patriarch, Huineng, also recognized that there were some sutras in the second term of the wheel, such as the Vajracenter, that he considered very important. Now, actually, the sixth patriarch was illiterate, but he had a natural faith in the meaning of the Prajnaparamita. So instead of relying on texts, he developed realization only by relying on the pith instructions of great gurus. And because of he developed realization, and his tradition is called the Southern tradition, the Southern Zen, or the instantaneous type. Now, he also had a Dharma brother who was the same teacher, and this is a famous Zen Kempo whose name was Xuan Shou. So Xuan Shou became well known among all the students, all the students of his teacher. He became the one of the most learned in the. But because he was given these teachings were given to Huineng, he then went to the north. And then for that reason, his tradition was called the Northern Zen, or the gradual tradition. So in this way, there are the two. In the Zen tradition, there are two. There are the gradual and the simultaneous tradition, these two. When they say the gradual, that what they mean is someone who's previously studied and then eliminates all their confusion. The simultaneous means those who do not rely on words and text, but instead point out the nature directly. So basically now there's not necessarily certain, it's not categorically so that all the Chinese Zen teachers teach the simultaneous tradition. Likewise, there also is another Chinese tradition, the Tian Tai tradition. And this relied on the teachings of the White Lotus Sutra that taught the developing the potential of the bodhisattva that arising simultaneously. So those who had already developed, aroused that, aroused the Mahayana family were simultaneous, and those who had not yet aroused the Mahayana family were the gradual. Now, there's a lot to be said about this, but I don't have time to say about them. So, for what the most important one is, when they say Hashang, the name, the Hasha, the Hashang view, that term itself is wrong. It's not a person's. It's not a single person's view. His lineage is called the Chinese Zen tradition. It's that lineage. It's the view of that. It's the view and explanations of that tradition. It's not a single person's. And so these days, the Zen tradition is spread all over the world. And to say that's all a wrong view, to a mistaken view, if we were have to say that, it would be rather difficult, I think. However, but actually, when we were all just in Tibet, we were in an isolated country. As soon as you say that the view is mistaken, we all just took it for granted that it was. And everyone makes a big lot of noise about it all being mistaken. There's no problem with that. But now in these days, when we Tibetans have left that isolated country, and we've come to all over the world. And we need to say things that are going to say things that people are going to be able to accept. If we continue to say all the things that we traditionally say in the old times, it'll be difficult for us to get along with other people. So in brief, when we talk about the Tibetan histories, most people of what they do is they follow other people's hearsay. When some person says something, then they follow that. And there are very few who actually do their own research and explain based on their own research. And so if someone in the past made a mistaken explanation, then all of their followers will naturally also be mistaken. If they have this thought that you need to if you want to, you have to first of all, you have to sort of take a detached view, and then you have to not follow other people. Then the next thing is you need to not follow other people's hearsay, and then you need to use the strength of your own intelligence to examine whether what we say in the Tibetan tradition is true, whether it's mistaken, and we can determine whether or not there are mistakes, and decide whether or not it's true. And I think if we do that, and so for that reason, so generally, there are so many things that I could say. There's a successive, there's the gradual and the instantaneous, and then what is there? And then there's the list of the four yogas, the sequence of the four yogas in the Kagyu tradition. And when you talk about the four yogas, they say that this is an invention of the Kagyus, and this is not in the Kagyus, in the Kangyur and the Tengyur. And I thought I ought to speak about that, but I haven't had time to prepare it. Likewise, there's no time. So in the future, if there is more time, I would like to continue and explain more about these. So next, so generally, now, this I've done as much as I could to give the best teachings I could during this Gunshu teaching, but I do not think that it turned out 100% actually as I wanted to do, that it turned out well. But basically, in order to not to break the cycle of interdependence, and so that as not to disappoint you, I think I've explained enough to do that, or taught enough to do that. So around the time of the Tibetan Losar, I think maybe we'll have a teaching for the nuns shedras, but we haven't. I can't tell you. We haven't determined the dates. I think I just had the idea that we should do this, but we haven't specifically set the schedule. So next, the Shadras say that they'd like to offer mandala and representations of body, speech, and mind, but how? If I were actually there, it would look good to offer a mandala, but if you offer it through over the internet, the person who is supposed to take the recipient can't take it, but the offers can't actually make it. But if we'll just pretend that we're actually doing it. So it's like the story of Apaho. So when the Lama is giving an empowerment, then just imagine that you're receiving the empowerment. So the Tibetans said, "Oh, there's something to say." They think, "Oh, this is great." And so he took some butter, and he offered the butter to it, and he said, "Lama, please imagine that you're receiving this butter," and then he took it back for himself. So it's like that. So that's the way it's like. So I'm going to recite the text, and so you please do your presentations or prepare yourselves.
Sampo jebe myalame doda ege kyawa danje ige ngozondo jinge dunye lurube deba kyawa gunla rabdo shanzano dushi dina dunye sange sege vina shubha da dedra shege ina maluba tamje kyawa dage gangro teda ngaba mize kyazo na yange yanla kyazo jage Yawa gunge yunde raju jen deora shiwa damje dage Medo damba jinwa damba da zinye nanda juwe dujo da mame joda duwe dam Yawa eda jeba ye nasa damba nanda jijo da shime boma rizhebe nyam Gaba gebra babe jogun ge yawa deda laya jebra Sheba gana lame gyazewa deda gyawa damje laya Sambo jela debe dada ge gyawa guna jaze jeb Dusha jela dimo wange ne luda ngada dejen ike Deba da gen giba jijeba deda damje lage zuzu Choje gyawa gunda sange se range namda lobda milo Chowa gunge saname gala ya deda gunge jeso dai. Kana choju jiden rema da janjo remba sange maz. Gombo deda dage namje la kolo lana meba gro. Yange da denga ji deda la roa gunga benshi de. Keba shinge dunye jowa ya dage demo rajra sa. Sanze wana jeje jawana jezo yera guye zo. Yawa jungse nage jeza ba danje nage janju. Nje o benza bu miya o che nambrada. Onje zege za je o benza rege Chijari guyu ge rawe yongsu guwe biso riye ge bo ribo joro Shara luwa bo lo zambo le no balan Chan zhame nye lu dan lu fa ngaye bu dan ngaye bu bishe Yonde da lam jang zho zhame nyen da zhame nyen nyen da Rinpo che riwo basam ge shen dun jue ye ba Mamebe Nodo Colorimboche, Noborimboche, Sumorimboche, Lomborimboche, Langborimboche, Tashorimboche, Magwerimboche, Terchimbi, Bomba, Ekimoma, Chiwama, Luma, Karma, Medoma, Dugema, Nazema, Chizema. Nima dawa rinpoche du chole nambre gewe ges. Uzo la dami benjoro bizum zaba ma sangwa me baram jam gyazu du ge ranglen. Ngombro ge bandini kyabda doje janjen bodang gomba yirma jebe banden lama damba denge ledo seneme. Bala gyabdaran jo uyen gyave nyugun rundu chile doje sal chole nambra yewe be zambi shengane tabi shugi duze libra tabi kujin tangra ge yun byore ge o tujin rove dendo shesu shene nye la do zo ajem buje 如也灭多日热那些年的眼包的桑叶线路灭的别忘也。若月难多，心罗觉巴拉哟。一道门古罗人那面的那康尼亚达利亚，阿弥。개근이지 라서 가마바 개근질레 지려 가마바 개근 동조 왕으로 감 오겐로들레 잡대서 개근이지 라서 가마바 개근질레 지려 감 개근 동조 왕으로 가마바 오겐로들레 잡대서 개근이지 라서 가마 개근질레 지려 가마바 개근 동조 왕으로 감 我严重的这类小店是饭店拉面消费店吧的，看见没有了第一种，大型嘛的做啥这样的，有的三个三两个吧了，他提前了的数码给啊写着呢，土地继续损失哪有什么多，但是呢的买的按钱了嘛都这样。 开个土地去送呢，眼过嘛多。
我说，
We are now having a thank you speech put on by the Surmang Monastery. This is Kempo Topten from Surmang Monastery, opening with some verses. So all of us students and teachers in the Kaju Shadows, with our deep faith and devotion, would like to offer our greetings and Tasha Delek to the Gyalwang Karmapa Orjin Dorjin. So because of many conditions and situations, the Gyalwang Karmapa was unable to come in person. But so finally now after a long time, we've been able to receive the blessings of a teaching and see him in person. So is now following the tradition of the Kagyu masters, explaining the teachings of the past, giving us the teachings on the 4 Dharmas of Gampopa. And we have all students, we have the opportunity to listen to the nectar of his teachings on the teachings. And so we have through the Gyalwang Karmapa to give us the 9 Shadras, in particular, a teaching on this, and to see his holiness, and to give us the instructions on the pith instructions through the internet. We would like to say, offer our great thanks for that. And so, because we did not want the Kagyu Gunsha to be entirely missed this year, we asked His Holiness to give the teachings over the internet. And we have, when His Holiness accepted the invitation, we've all delighted and we've listened with great delight. And so we have has been able to His Holiness has been able to do a lot of work. He has written a commentary on the 50 verses about the Guru in Chinese. He is also working on a commentary in Tibetan on the jewel ornament of liberation. And so there are many different ways of explaining the different, of explaining the texts, and we in the shadows do not always know, but we also, so we thank His Holiness for explaining everything. And so may your activity spread like the waxing moon. And may be able to guide all sentient beings gradually to the state of realizing the profound nature. And may remain in this earth for many eons.
So
Khenpo Rinpoche was really kind of showing off. In the Gunsha, when you were the Umze. What Khenpo did when he was playing the cymbals, he probably never played them much. So Khenpo is probably. So he got blisters from holding the cymbals, and I had a lot of difficulty with it. So thank you. So you better. So next, this opportunity to teach the profound and vast Dharma in the Shuddha, I feel, is a very great fortune for me. And this opportunity, or such an opportunity, I'd like to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And so primarily, it's our Kyabje Saman Gaon Rinpoche and the Shudra and the monks of the Surma Monastery. You have done all the preparations for this and made the request for this. And so I'd like to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And next, I don't have much else to say. When I look out, so generally, I don't have the qualities of abandonment and realization that the great masters of the practice lineage of the past did, but now in this degenerate time, and in particular at a time when the Kaiju teachings are in a difficult situation, I feel a bit of a enthusiasm or determination about that. Particularly, for the past couple of years, the feeling that I've had is, I think perhaps I need to live for a long time. I've thought this. No, I never had this thought much before, but I do see a few reasons. If I can do something for the beings of the teachings, this isn't a question of my own capacity, but there's a sense of, if you get the opportunity, you can't do it. If you say someone else is going to do it and hope for someone else to do it, it's not going to work. In particular, in the future, there are the masters and the Kagyu great Rinpoches will continue to happen, but sometimes, if we all get old and leave, it's difficult. So no matter what difficulties or hardships that happen, I think if we can take that, I think if I can take it on myself, and so I feel this courage to do this. And so I have this idea that I can maybe live for a long time. Of course, I can't say how long I'll live. But I do have the resolve to live a long life. And that's the feeling I have in my mind. So this year, so generally it's my obstacle year, but all the monasteries and nundas have really done a lot of pujas on my behalf. You've done them very well. So I'd like to thank you very much. It's very kind of you. So all of you are making the aspirations, and as I just mentioned, have that thought, maybe I'll stay and do something to benefit, if I could stay and do something to benefit the beings and the teachings. And I have that idea. But the main thing, the most important thing, is that I can live for a long lifetime. I've read many master teachers, many of them didn't live very, very long. Because no matter how many qualities of being learned and venerable good, because they didn't live a long time, there was not much came of it. And so I have this idea that I can stay here and continue to live for a long time. And so please, all of you, please pray that this may come to pass. Now, before I make any announcements, my announcement is this: that this year we can't hold the Kajima themselves, so as to take its place, we will have an internet Munlam. And the time of that, the dates of that Munlam will be the January 20th until the 27th. So it's 8 days long. And so these are 8 days long. We'll do this over the internet. So we'll do that similarly to how we did this before. But I thought I would make this announcement in English and Chinese as well. But I'll pretend that I can speak in these languages. I have to check my voice first.
2020 was a difficult year for everyone because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in 2021, it is not possible to hold the Kagyu in Bodh Gaya. So from January 20th to January 27th, there will be a program of 8 days of prayers called Aspirations to the End Adversity. Like before, there will be different prayers every day. The sessions will start at 1300 GMT, and the prayers will be available in an ebook on the Dharma ebooks website. They have one Dharma ebooks website. OK， 由于这个疫情的关系呢，就2020年呢，就是对于这个每一个人来说的话，都是非常辛苦的一年。而今年的这个2021年的这个祈愿法会也无法举行在菩提迦耶，所以呢，从这个月的这个20到27号，我会带领大家进行为期8天的网络共修，叫做除障祈愿共修。跟去年的这个祛病消灾的共修一样，我们每天都会念诵不同的内容。8天当中呢，每天的这个共修都会在格林位置就是标准时间的这个13点钟开始。共修的法本也将在这个近期上传在这个 Dharma ebook 的这个正法电子是吧？正法网站是吧？电子书的这么一个网站上，所以呢，之后大家都可以下载。
So now we'll recite. First we have to
Yegun ninji ransu Karmapa, Yegun chile jigu Karma, Yegun donso wanguro Karmapa, Uyen rondu tele shabden su, Chunga chenbu rayen dongye semjen tagi, Geba chewa samye su, Chöden ze zere shu. Adi, na. Namo Guru Lama Nanda Yedam Genguru La Juju Du Suen Gyawa Sedan La Zegon Da Ge Men Lama No E Shi Shen Zhubi Dun Giru Shen La Da 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 Ye Sim Jen Tam Je Ge Sam Guru Nam Da Kan Re Le Ge Hosum Nyom Me Ge Zo Chu Gen Na Gyawa Ku Ji Gya Surun Ju Jese mo do ba de ze do ge dan ge we ze ru gun do di dan dong e ra ya me ra xin de ga ya ze be na ze de ru je do e de ze che ro de xin ye san de dan be chu do zhe xin ru la ba xie ma ze bra ze ru gun do e dan ju che ma Lore debe mi xie zhe le zhe mian a san be di so mi na gu zhou wei ge ni lu ji jin se xi ru song ge na o ra ge ba da xie da zhe di ni xie ye zhe zhu gu ru da zhe song ye lang zhou 世袭道之对念之多别故处灭别却当之不拉江西生业三东宗主那中气小心多气难住罗长者路不知别之马那将这去不中新郎中多结巴大运点点拉满眼叫我公边公天跟拉三中结别叫大公结别叮当的马全能他们这生给男子的生年生命生给我的同心满个吉安那我的里布拉达呢西萨绝不也马牛为让那宇宙是马里王给让里大多你在王给西边浪多呀马里这边在这结巴也把马也给为讲嘛谁没把马也看得滚也看到马也从中面那他这心也去年到吧地谢家刚给全把没地没谢家刚给个把老人的别今年的嘛这样的对给他那也不啦你嘛多个月叫做罗个人的你多那三个先啦同前的地面个呀没去年归些三年的不啦那要是了，都要是人的，都要是了，这样让给，也要是了，个要是人，别找到他们这生了这个。绿旗这边公鸡马来，见他们的这龙给马这，马这牛不啦，让不叫些别生的娘们给先用了。查拉多别，我都不上是些，永别生给就安给，亲母牛别，芝麻当着别，新年家做没有点不。大妹子了，样样的别，这东面对你极限那个人，原没的了的送去吧，你去面让我让给些吧。娱乐的别，娱乐生活，多生了的别，生命我为你了的别，你在老子了，这不是生给你老多不啦？一切照完的你查呀，这大大这我无马前不一。天天滚的做些些样子，这些滚的都别定多。前方没别的前军些没甚至没别不是只有老人的别没多人也着正面娘娘云前没法伤心娘也只把让子了这俺多只把让心因说他没些把帮忙这多没这今年见不到这位人些大多三爷呀马多王爷他们过了冬天没得没别生见了生命年纪越来越生命年纪这样别这句我冬天见不了从这个啥这位郎中的这面年纪滚多光不多来中前当关系，当心情面接上给心热问，上给全脑这边慢了忙做面将送们他心上给，求主叫我世界都见，能不能给我今年月别，接他的搭档心间当这给慢了忙的，细心注有罗见。那你给我当街头，下面到5个月，贴不到半点干嘛吧？记住见到面这些，哦，那说，都是些，那说。
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.